Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and as you know, our legislature is now currently involved in a special session, and this is their first special session after they made it a legal special session, and they're up there for about 5 weeks. It's supposed to be kind of like a mid-course correction, but it ends up being a full-blown session with all kinds of issues on the table. So today we're honored to Skype in from the Capitol Representative Sal Esquivel from Medford. He's a Republican from Medford, to kind of get an update what's going on up there. Mr. Representative, good to see you, sir.
How are we doing today, Perry?
Good, man. Good to see you. Well, your first quick synopsis, how's it going?
Well, it's what I anticipated when we voted in annual sessions. It's too much monkey business and not enough to the business. And what I mean by that is that this should have been restricted solely to the budgetary tweaks that need to be done, which would have taken us 1 to 2, maybe 3 days at the most. And now we're getting into some large policy issues that should not be on the table. We're getting into gut and stuffs. I mean, there was 157, I believe, bills just in the House alone.
Whoa. Whoa. All right. So let's get an update on a few of these. What happened to the Veterans Bill? I understand they got voted down, huh?
That was probably the most emotional thing we had in veterans for a number of years. And what it was is we had House Bill 4023, I believe it was, and the Democratic leadership here killed the bill. And let me tell you what the bill amounted to. It amounted to telling the lottery to do a scratch game, and it would be a veterans-only scratch game. So it'd be geared toward veterans, and all the proceeds, which should be about $1.1 million, would go to help get back our service officers in universities and colleges, and as well as community colleges. But the Democratic leadership killed that, and it was either the governor and or the speaker or both. They killed that bill, so we got and stuffed it and sent it back out. But let me give you a perspective of what that did. At $1.1 million meant a lot to the veterans, because they would have a veteran service officer on the campus to tell them about their benefits.
Right.
Now, that's out of $1.1 billion revenue. Very minimal. Would not have hurt anything, but the leadership decided not to help veterans out. And it's just a crying shame. But we got and stuffed it. And hopefully we'll get on the Senate side and be able to reintroduce back into the bill the proper wordage to get that back for veterans.
What was their main reason for stuffing it, Sal? I mean, what was
the reason they said was, we had to stuff it because if we had gone along and passed it out, even though the committee considered that, including the Democrats on the committee, of taking that bill out as it was and send it out to the floor, it would have to have gone to Ways and Means, and if it went to Ways and Means, it would die. So therefore, we got and stuffed it with some stuff that was just awful, but at least it didn't have a fiscal on it, so therefore it can go to the floor, and next it will go back over to the Senate. So we bypassed Ways and Means.
All right, let's go over to cover Oregon. As you know now, Congressman Walden has called for an investigation. Has that resonated at all up there during this special session?
Hasn't been much talk about that one iota, one way or the other. I think the people that talk about it the most are probably the Republicans, because we're very proud of Greg, and we're very proud of Dennis Richardson for being there and calling for this. Dennis tried to tell him a year ago or more that this will not work, and of course there's been maybe some irregularities. We're not sure, but the only way we find out is to get someone to take a good hard look at it and find out if there were irregularities.
Is there any call for any oversight on this mess?
Yeah, they had it was almost a laughable bill, and it was, what was that House bill? It was one I voted no on it, and it was House Bill 4122, I think is what it was. And that bill hired a contractor to oversee the contractor but no one's overseeing no one's overseeing the department, nor is anyone overseeing the policies of the department.
The Fox
so
walk.
It's just it's a gee, let's give ourselves some cover, do a dog and pony show for the public, and we'll say, well, you know, we had oversight.
Boy, you guys gave new meaning to a fox in the hen house there. All right, let's move on. What's going on with the communities that don't want the marijuana dispensaries? Do you think that's going to go anywhere?
I think it probably will pass. It appears it passed out of the Senate unanimously that our communities cannot restrict that, and I think that's deplorable.
So.
I think Medford should, if they want to, they should be able to say yay or nay on a business license. They can't prohibit it with this bill.
Wow. What's happening with the gun bill?
Well, the gun bill's DOA, and I knew it would be. We have a National Sportsman's Caucus for state legislators in this state, and we're up to, I think, 41 or 42 members now out of 90. And that's Democrats and Republicans, and we're very adamant about a restriction of the Second Amendment. This particular gun bill didn't restrict the Second Amendment, but it did inhibit people, law-abiding people, because what it did is extended background checks. Like, you and I are friends, so I want to sell you a gun, or you want to sell me a gun, so we have to go through a background check in order to do that. Or we could be maybe a grandfather and a great-grandson or something like that. You still have to go through it because they had just the immediate family that was eligible to take and give the weapon or sell the weapon to someone within the immediate family, and you didn't have to have the check. But the problem I see there is that you think that the criminal on the street's going to go through a background check when they buy it?
Yeah, well,
I mean,
I know some of this.
Let's use our head here, folks.
Yeah, well, what's the old saying? If logic doesn't work, don't use it.
Well, yeah. that's pretty good. I like that. I like the other one too. Common sense is common. Why is it so uncommon in this place?
Yeah, if it doesn't work, don't use it. All right. So, do you see anything that could bump our tax bill out there?
Bump our tax bill?
Yeah.
I don't see anything that's coming down the tube that will do that.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything yet. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be coming around. Yeah. I've also heard through the grapevine, through the jungle drums, that the nurseries, I believe it is, well, maybe it's not the nurseries, I don't know who it is, but someone's behind a push to change the wording of the title on the licensing of illegals that we're doing as a ballot measure.
Really?
They didn't like the Attorney General. They didn't like the pro and the con that we had, and I think it's deplorable that the arrogance of this institution would go and say, okay, we're going to change this just because we can.
Wow.
And they're going to slant that, so it'll try, in my opinion, it'll probably try to confuse people.
Wow. Well, so what do you think this session is going to be noted for? I mean, what is there any mid-course correcting going on, or has everybody got their own pet bills they want to get through?
Well, I see that they have a bill in to change the number of days. They want to go from 35 to 45 days on this session. They want to lop off 10 days off the odd number year session. And I'll be honest with you, I think this session will go down as something we need to look at on changing back the Constitution and not allowing annual sessions. We could have come in this building. There's nothing that we have done thus far, or passed or not passed, that could not have waited until next year. We are not in a position. We have yet to do a budget bill, a budget tweak. Wow. So if we haven't done that, and that was the original intent, then we sold a bill of goods to the public, whomever advocated for this, sold a bill of goods to the public saying that we need to have these annual sessions. And I disagree with that. I think that you could come in on a special session, be in and out 1 or 2 days at the maximum, tweak the budget and go home, instead of having all this policy stuff coming up in such a short period of time. And some of these are very complex issues, and we should not be approaching them at this time.
What's your party leadership saying about the upcoming election? Do you see the House turning back? You guys going to pick up some seats? How does it look for the Senate? What's your feel?
Well, I think we have a very good chance in the Senate, and I think we're going to pick up some seats in the House. That's my opinion. I think Dennis Richardson's going to do well as a in the governor race. I think that it's time. And the key to this whole thing, Perry, is getting out the vote on the Republican side.
Right.
1 in 5 Republicans sit home and do not vote.
Right.
And when they don't vote, they're giving that vote to the Democrats.
Right. Yeah, we're going to do a real push among churches this coming month to help people understand it's totally legal for them to do voter registration. Let's get people back voting. So,
well, I agree 100%. And not only that, not only registration, but also the people that are registered need to get out and vote. They need to turn out. Just in the next year, let's just turn out.
Okay. Well, Sal, thanks again for your service up there and the long hours you guys putting in. You're a champion. Hang in there, pal, and let's check in again before it's all over, okay?
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right, see you. Sal Esquivel, Representative Sal Esquivel, live from the state capitol this morning. All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Welcome back. You know, the question has often been asked, why would a loving and kind God allow for pain and suffering? One of the big questions that often pops up during conversations of apologetics and things like that. Well, our next guest, Pastor Bob Russell, he started a church of 120, and today it's over 18,000. Southeast, Christian church back in Kentucky. And he put together a film called Acts of God, which tackles this question: how can a loving and kind God allow for pain and suffering? Well, join me now as we talk to Pastor Russell about that. Well, today we're delighted to talk to Pastor Bob Russell. Now, he's an interesting gentleman. He's pastored a church that ended up being one of the largest churches in America. He's authored several books, and he just got involved in now making a movie, and we're going to talk to him about that. But Bob, nice to have you, my friend. Good to see you.
Well, thank you, Perry. Good to be here.
You went from 120 to 18,000, and you lived through it.
Well, I was there at Southeast Christian Church in Louisville, Kentucky for 40 years. I started when I was 22 and stayed with the church. They just couldn't get rid of me, and I stayed with it for 40 years and retired when I was a little over 62.
Well, congratulations. And the work goes on. That's what a testament. How did you get into making the movie Acts of God?
Well, there's a production studio in Louisville, Kentucky called City on a Hill, and they had contracted with Trinity Broadcast Network to do a movie. They've done several films with them, but to do a film about why bad things happen to good people or how Christians should be able to withstand tragedy. And they then approached me and asked me if I would work with them on this project. And I was intrigued by the subject. I think it's needed. And so we began to work together and used as the basis of the study the life of Joseph in the Bible. There's a full-length movie, which is about 1 hour and 45 minutes long, dealing with contemporary families that have issues. And then that movie is broken down into 6 segments for small group studies. And I am the teacher in the small group study on the life of Joseph. And often we use the life of Job to talk about suffering, but Joseph went through a series of tragedies as well. Then they asked me, they said, if you're going to do the small group study for this movie, there's a role for a preacher in the movie. Would you be willing to play the role of the preacher? And I said, look, I never have acted in my life. I didn't even act in high school. I don't know that I could do that. I don't want to be hokey. And I do want to stretch. I want to be used of God. But I will try it if you be sure to be honest with me about whether it works or not. And they said, oh, we'll be honest. And they said, all we want you to do is be yourself. Just be yourself. And they had a number of very professional actors and actresses, and I was a little bit intimidated. And I found out at first that being myself wasn't good enough. They said, well, let's try that again. But, eventually I got since it was the role of a preacher, and I had been in many of those situations, I actually liked it and enjoyed it.
Well, congratulations. The topic itself, Bob, is a touchy one. A lot of churches don't even go there.
Well, I think there's several reasons that churches are reluctant to talk about pain and suffering. One is that there's no easy answer. I mean, you even look at the book of Job, which is a book about suffering, and we see Job suffering, and then you look, what's God's answer for why he permitted Job to suffer? And the answer seems to be, you know what? I'm not going to give you the complete answer. You just got to trust, and you've got to wait for my will to be accomplished. And we preachers like to be able to wrap everything up in 30 minutes and give easy answers. And there are no easy answers to this question. And maybe one other reason that churches are reluctant to go there is that so many people hurt.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you're pulling back the scab again, and rather than letting the wound heal. But I really think that we need to equip our people and our leaders especially to deal with this subject of why God permits so much pain in the world, because that's probably the number one reason that people doubt. And Christian people need to be reinforced, and they need to have an answer for the hope that's in them.
Would you agree it seems that Christians now are just on overload with a lot of pain and suffering, just in general?
It really seems that way, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised because, the Lord predicted in the last days there would be terrible times. And it just seems like we're inundated with a lot of tragedies and a lot of pain. In addition to that, persecution of Christians and ridicule of Christians is starting to step up. And that's one of the reasons that this movie, and then accompanying the movie, I've written a book called Acts of God, which Moody is publishing, and that's to be released, I think, the 1st of April. So we're hoping that the movie and the small group studies and the book will really be helpful to people about this subject. Wow.
The tagline, you got a little bit interesting twist to it. Sometimes God gives us more than we can handle. Explain that. Expound on that a little bit.
There's a tagline that says, God doesn't give us more than we can handle alone.
Alone.
Yeah. 1 Corinthians 13 talks about God will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you can bear. And a lot of times Christian people will say to somebody who's hurting, well, remember that God won't let you, won't put more on you than you can bear. And that kind of gags somebody who's going through suffering. And, just like the promise of all things work together for good, he doesn't have that promise to everybody. It's to those who love God and to those who are called according to his purpose. And the promise that God won't give you more than you can bear is the end of that verse is he will provide a way out, that you will be able to stand up underneath it. But we've got to be relying on God. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And we see people all the time who buckle under the weight of suffering, and maybe they turn to alcohol or to drugs or to suicide or just run away and try to escape. They need the Lord, and we need to have an awesome trust in God if we're going to go through some of the hard times that come.
Were you pleased with the outcome of the film?
I got to tell you, I was really pleased. I was apprehensive when I first read the script. Because it is so realistic, and it is a very heavy film. It is not a film you're going to go in. It's not a comedy, and it's not a feel-good movie. When you feel good when you come out because there is a positive ending and an inspirational ending. But everybody who sees this film says, "Boy, that's a heavy film, but boy, it is realistic." Sometimes Christians are accused of not living in the real world and trying to escape reality. And this movie is not like that. And this movie is not hokey. It demonstrates that people have real problems. And just because you believe in the Lord does not mean that those problems are over in an instant. In this movie, there are 4 different families that are interwoven with each other, and they're all dealing with different problems. And they're not over in 30 minutes. But when I saw the end result of this movie, and the last 10 minutes just is really inspirational in that it's realistic, and yet it reminds us of the hope we have in God for eternal life through Christ. And so I was very pleased when it was finished.
Now, I understand this is going to turn into, or has turned into, a group study, a DVD series for small groups.
Yes, we advise that people see the movie first in its entirety. And then there are 6 segments of small group studies on acts of God. And the study will show a clip from the movie. And then I'm the teacher in the small group studies. And we're going to focus on the life of Joseph. You think of how Joseph, for 3 decades, went through problems with a dysfunctional family. His brothers brutalized him and threatened to kill him. And then he was a slave, and he did what was right, and he still was punished for doing the right thing and resisting the temptation of Potiphar's wife. And he gets thrown into jail, and he interprets the dream for the cupbearer, and he still is left in jail for 2 years. And he has one problem after another. But the end result was God blessed him at the end, and God used all that suffering to humble him and prepare him for being the prime minister of Egypt.
Wow. So, Bob, is there a sequel to this?
Well, we're wanting to get through this first one and see how it's responded, but we're really excited about it. You know, people don't need, it's my observation in many years of ministry through difficult situations, that most people going through pain really don't need a theological explanation. They just need an emotional identification. People ask, why is God letting this happen to me? And there is no easy answer to that. But when they see somebody else went through it and they endured it, they've been through difficult times just like I'm going through difficult times, and they held on to their faith, and if they can do it, I can do it too. And I think that is one of the primary messages of the book, Acts of God, and of this movie, Acts of God.
All right, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you a question off topic just for a moment.
Sure.
Starting a church at 120, building it to 18,000, pastoring it for 40 years, how did you know in your heart it was time to walk away?
Well, I planned that in advance. And I had read a book called Too Great a Temptation by Joel Gregory, and it talked about how the transition at the First Baptist Church in Dallas had not gone well. And I said, that can't happen to Southeast Christian Church, because we've got to learn from that. And so I met with our elders, and we developed a 5-year transition plan. And we were blessed to have 2 guys on staff, younger guys, Dave Stone and Kyle Eidelman, who were coming up. They were ready to take over. And when I set that date 5 years in advance, and I got to July 1st, 2006, I had prayed about it and planned for it, and I was excited about actually stepping aside, knowing that I was turning the church over to some very capable hands. But you know what, Perry, when I stepped aside, I didn't quit just so I could play golf or fish or something.
Yeah, I don't find quit or retirement in the Bible.
No, I think we need to retire to something.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to have another chapter in my life when my health was good and I still had the vitality to do it. And so I've spent a lot of time mentoring ministers and trying to have a ministry to church leaders. And I think this project, Acts of God, falls into that category.
So you mentored your successors.
Yes, we chose them 5 years in advance, and I let them preach more and more, and we talked about leadership, and we turned more and more things over to them, and it was a transition that went really smoothly.
Wow, congratulations. All right, the movie's called Acts of God, and where can people begin to get a copy of this and see it?
If they would go on the website for City on a Hill in Louisville, Kentucky, that would pop up, or they could just go to bobrussell.org, and there's some reference material there about the movie as well. They could get a DVD. I was in a church in Greenwood, Mississippi last Sunday that showed the movie on Saturday night and on Sunday night again for their people, and I preached on the subject on Sunday morning, and the responses were really good. And that's one of the things that churches could do. Churches could get the DVD, show it to the entire church, and then there's a 6-week sermon series that's available. The preachers could preach. I've written 6 sermons on the life of Job that could get them started anyway.
Bob, you're a delight and an inspiration. Thank you, my friend. What an honor to have you today, and best to you. And let's stay in touch as you are used in the future in new stretching ways.
Well, thank you, Perry. It's good talking to you. God bless you.
All right, fascinating series to say the least. All right, coming up next, we're going to continue our series asking local pastors how they're encouraging their congregation during these challenging times, and that'll come up next here on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, welcome back. We started a series several weeks ago dealing with how are you coping with your faith during these challenging times? And so we've been asking some local pastors to come in and just share with us how they're encouraging their congregations to stay faithful and to trust the Lord during these times where it seems like every aspect of our faith is being challenged. I'm really honored to have with us today Reverend Ken Sampson. He is the new priest at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Medford, and he's been here not quite a year, so he's the new guy on the block. And Father, nice to have you with us.
Well, good morning.
So you've been here since when? July?
Since July 1st, yes.
And you come from?
Prior to this assignment, I was pastor at St. Mary Star of the Sea Parish in Astoria, so overlooking the Columbia River as it meets the ocean. Yeah, beautiful. All
right, now you're down here and you got a big congregation and a lot of responsibility in a school. When do you sleep?
Sometimes I don't. Yeah. But it's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome to the Valley. And again, I've been to a couple of services that you have overseen, memorials and others, and did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
All right, tell us a little bit about Sacred Heart. Now, this church has been in town for a long time. It's been a cornerstone of our community.
Yes.
And you're running about, you said 2,400 families?
Yes, that's right.
And what portion of that is Hispanic?
We're about 50-50 right now. So we have 3 priests who are assigned there, and we also have Sacred Heart School and St. Mary's School, which are next year celebrating their 150th anniversary here in Medford. So we've been around a while.
Wow. All right. And you oversee all that.
Yes, I'm the
guy.
head cheese, as my nephew likes to say.
Well, let's come back to the subject, and that is, I don't know, have we ever lived in a time where every tenet of our faith is being challenged in the culture?
Right.
And I want to say to you and your church and all of those that you serve with in the Catholic community, thank you for your strong stand on the side of life and traditional family values. I consider our partnership to be very, very precious because you guys have been very strong and unwavering, and yet you felt the pressure, and you still feel the pressure, don't you? How do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, I think, as I was just talking to you before the break, when it comes to the issue of life, we have to be able to respond on both sides of that crisis. And one of the ministries we have here locally that we just finished a fundraiser for to continue to provide ministry for is the Magdalene Home. Right. So for young women who are in crisis, you know, the story was that that ministry was inspired by a woman who was on the street, who didn't have resources, she didn't have a model of a family, and she actually approached our pastor then at that time, Bishop Liam Carey, and said, you know, if you really believe in this message of pro-life, what are you prepared to do to help us to choose that? And so that came to fruition in this ministry of the Magdalene Home to provide a place for women to live and to complete their education, to get job training, to learn parenting skills. Right. So, you know, on one side, we have ministries like that are supportive of people in crisis. But next month, I'm also helping out, for instance, with a retreat called Rachel's Vineyard. It's a retreat that assists post-abortive women to find healing and forgiveness and wholeness. So we have to, I think, be ready to respond.
Yeah. Well, you've done that remarkably, and in some ways, the Catholic Church has put their money where their mouth is, and I say that respectfully because you really have stepped up and taken some strong stands. But even today, Father Sampson, you probably are feeling the pressure, maybe even within some of your own congregants, to relax some of these things. And I know that from the Pope down, it seems to be very strong. This is who we are. This is what we're going to stand for. And you augment that, obviously. How are you helping your congregants deal with that kind of pressure?
Well, you know, we get pressure politically or from our culture, but I think that's one of the most consistent things about our faith. We have people who gravitate toward our church because of our pro-life stance. So I don't feel necessarily pressure from within. We have always looked at life as a great gift from God, and we try our best to not only take that stand when it comes to pregnancy, but to be consistent with it, as the late Cardinal Bernardine used to say, as a seamless garment, not only from the beginning of life, but through the end as well. We live in a state here where there's physician-assisted suicide, the first state to legalize that. And,
right.
and so we have to take up the battle at that end of life as well and make sure that even when we're infirmed, even when our our health is failing,
right.
There's value to that life we can learn from the wisdom of our senior members of our community as well. So we live in a culture, I think, that at times is like a throwaway,
right.
disposable
right.
culture, and we just have to be consistent in our position.
Are you feeling from your parishioners the sense of pressure in their lives today a little bit more than we've seen it in the past? And I say that because if I take some of the emails and phone calls we get here at the Dove, those who are strong in their faith are feeling the pressure today that somehow they're just a heaviness over the top of all of us, which I would hope would drive us closer to Christ. But sometimes it even drives us to question our faith. And do you address those issues?
Yes, I think I first recently saw the challenge with the recession, with the economic crisis, a lot of people losing jobs, losing their homes. You know, it's a kind of a Job experience where you ask yourself, where's God in this moment? But, you know, we try to encourage people to hold firm to their faith in spite of that. I think politically, sometimes I feel that we have pressure on us to waver. I think most recently with the national health care law. You know, when we approach ministry, our motive is our faith. That's why we reach out to help people. We don't ask whether a person is, for instance, Catholic. When we help them, we ask if they're hungry. But with the national health care law, it seems in some aspects of it that we're being penalized for doing that because our institutions that reach out to those in need don't fall under the special dispensation of faith-based organizations. So.
You know, since you bring that up, I wasn't going to go there, but since you put it on the table, you know, it appears to me that the Catholic Church is under a lot of pressure from HHS these days, and now other corporations, whether they're Protestant or Catholic, they're feeling the pressure, and all of a sudden we're asking ourselves, hey, wait a minute, can a government dictate to the conscience of our belief and force us to go in a way that we just totally oppose with our faith? It's a new pressure, isn't it?
It is. And almost from the beginning of the announcement of this law, we had a joint legal action take place with Catholic universities, with Catholic hospitals, with other institutions, because we've been told that for Catholic churches or institutions within our organization that exclusively serve Catholics or are exclusively Catholic in their makeup of their staff, that we would be exempt from following this law. But if we serve a more diverse community, suddenly we're not free to follow our conscience, we feel. And since our motive for helping them is our faith, it seems to me that we're caught in a very awkward position. So we continue to fight to get that changed, to allow protection of our conscience.
I think that, you know, I don't know if the Catholic Church down the road, whether through a university or through a hospital, would be forced to close over these things. But I'm hearing from some ranks within your faith that they may take that kind of action to prove the point. I mean, that we're prepared to make some really difficult decisions in order to protect the conscience of our faith.
Well, I know of specific cases, for instance, with Catholic orphanages, where in states they've tried to force us to adopt out children to gay couples.
Right.
When we refuse to comply with that, ministries have chosen to close rather than to continue to serve communities where they've been in place for sometimes more than a century.
Right.
I was just reading this morning that 1 in 5 Americans receive medical care from Catholic hospitals.
Right.
So, you know, if something were ever decided along those lines, I think our whole country would feel the impact of that. And similarly, you know, with Catholic education, we educate more than 3 million people each year with around 250 Catholic universities, about 1,200 high schools, and around 5,000 kindergarten through 8th grade schools. So sometimes these pressures might have far-reaching impact. I hope that it doesn't come to that, but we may reach a point where we have to make those kind of difficult decisions.
And you made the comment, and I want you to elaborate on that a little bit when we come back from the break, that because of your strong stance based upon your faith and your conviction before God, it becomes an attraction to those who want that kind of stability and solidarity in their life. And I want you to expound on that. We'll be right back with Father Sampson from Sacred Heart Catholic Church here in Medford in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're continuing on with our special series asking local pastors and priests to share with us how they are ministering to their congregations in these days where it seems like every aspect of our faith is being challenged culturally and being stretched, and we're being asked to be compromised, and all of a sudden our faith is the water cooler topic of the day, and are we properly defending it? I am delighted to have with us Reverend Ken Sampson. He's the priest at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church here in Medford, new on the job, not quite a year yet. He came here in July, and he has a big job overseeing not only the Sacred Heart Parish, but the schools and the high schools, and Magdalene Home and everything else. So he's one busy guy, so thanks for your time again.
Thank you.
Father, nice to have you with us. As we were going into the break, I just am so grateful for the Catholic Church unwavering stand on these issues that have become significant in our culture, life, traditional marriage, and the other tenets of your faith that are very strong. And it appears that this now becomes an attraction to your church. The people are attracted to the Catholic Church because you are unnegotiable in what you believe.
Right. Well, one of the things I think that make up our approach to teaching on morality is that it's not subject to Gallup polls. It's not subject to the latest change in the wind. When we consider the position of our church in things moral, we also consider the position of Christianity in previous centuries, and there has to be a consistency with that. And so, yes, we're proudly uncompromising in those areas, but I think at the same time we have to recognize for those who have been trapped in sin and who have fallen, we want to have a compassion as we reach out to them. So we try to strike that balance, but compassion with truth.
Yeah,
we can never waver from that.
The Catholic Church believes very strongly in the act of confession.
Yes.
Am I going down the right road here?
Sure.
Okay. And the reason I bring this up, it appears that in confession is great healing.
Yes.
And the reason I bring this up as a Protestant, I just think that this is something we need to put back in the forefront. There's something about the James chapter 5 issue, call for the elders of the church, anoint with oil, pray the prayer of faith. Any sin, they shall be forgiven. But confess your faults one to another. There's something in there that is very powerful that we're missing. You want to comment on that?
Well, I was just speaking
to... You can preach now if you want to.
I was just speaking to a group of people last night about our sacramental structure, and for those who are not familiar with it, I don't think you can properly understand it without understanding two things. One is we consider it one vehicle of God's grace where we can experience an encounter with Christ in a concrete way, but also it's always in the context of our community life. And so all of our sacramental tradition is based on that we've joined the body of Christ. We're part of something bigger than ourselves. And so for those who strive to try and understand how we approach the sacrament of reconciliation, we view all sin as an offense against God, but also it wounds the body of Christ. It harms community life in some respect. And so for us, the sacrament of reconciliation is an opportunity to experience that healing, that sense of forgiveness from God, but also with a representative of the community to sort of let us know that we're welcome back.
Are you more busy in that area lately?
We're always busy in that area.
Well,
and I'm grateful
lends
for that.
itself to what we're talking about because of the pressure of our faith to compromise. Somebody does compromise, and then they feel the break in their connection with God. They come back, right?
I think so. And to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's those little moments of conversion where we turn around in our heart and return to God. We all need those opportunities,
Amen.
whether we seek them through our personal prayer or, in our case, in that sacramental tradition.
Well said. All right, I want to come back to the overall hierarchy of the church, and you got a new pope.
Right.
And he seems to be taking the world by storm. I mean, you just mentioned he's going to be on Rolling Stone magazine. He's been on Time magazine. The world's kind of scratching their head about him. And isn't it interesting that those who would oppose what the Catholic Church believes are yet recognizing the uniqueness of this leader and putting him on the cover? So you got a pro-life, pro-traditional family, religious leader on the cover of these magazines. What's happening?
Yeah, not only that, but his strong emphasis on reaching out to serve the poor and those in the third world. And some of his messages are kind of challenging and perhaps a little bit uncomfortable to hear for some of us who live in a more comfortable existence. But I think that what is attractive about him is the way in which he's presenting consistent teachings that we've had in the past. I find it kind of ironic that perhaps his largest group of critics come from the more conservative base of our church, actually. Perhaps some who wish he would scold or quote rules and regulations more frequently. But I think his approach is to emphasize the importance of encountering Christ in our daily life. That's the answer.
But that's not to say you see him weak in those areas.
No, not at all.
So you see him to being a real strong defender of the tenets of the faith. I mean, much like Pope Benedict.
Yes,
he really basically was a theological intellectual, wasn't he?
Right. Our previous two popes have come from academia, more so, and I think that Pope Francis has more of a pastoral background, and some people call him a Twitter Pope because he's good at one-liner quotes that catch your attention, and sometimes they require a little fleshing out the next day because he's operating from a certain base of assumption in terms of the teaching of our faith. For instance, you know, our church tradition will never endorse any other model of marriage other than between a man and a woman. We'll never waver from the idea that the family is the basic building block of society. But, you know, at the same time, he talks about the church as being a house for the broken. And I recently gave a retreat a couple weeks ago about some of his parting letters from Argentina. When he reached the age of retirement, he assumed that he was going to
lay back,
head off into green pastures. So he submitted all the letters and essays and things that he had written, and he turned them over to a publisher if they were interested in publishing anything. And they produced a book called Open Mind, Faithful Heart. And what struck me about that was his emphasis on our goal to encounter Christ on a daily basis, not just to believe that it's possible, but actually to understand that it happens every day if we pay attention to it. You know, that we encounter Christ when we read Scripture, when we pray, through people we meet, and he said that it's important to understand when you encounter him, it's always life-changing.
Yeah. Right.
And to respond to the pressures of the culture, as you're talking about, his answer is encounter Christ.
Encounter Christ.
Because there are so many people, I think, who go through life sleepwalking, or who maybe have an understanding of faith that is simply intellectual.
Yeah.
And I think he wants more people to understand that when we encounter him, it's always a dynamic thing. It's going to lead to evangelization, always sharing the good news with other people.
As a priest, how do you handle, when we come to Christ, we're not full grown.
Right.
We're babes.
Yep.
And there's this incubation time, there's this teenage time,
right,
before you get in the young adult. You know the drill. How do you structure for that? How do you, because if somebody's drawn to the church and they come to Christ and they surrender to Christ and they ask him to be the Savior of their lives, how does the Catholic Church handle that infancy stage of a newborn in Christ?
Well, as with most churches, we try to have faith formation programs, Bible studies, other opportunities like that, because part of our growth is through study. We try to teach people how to pray in a more deep, intimate way. My background before becoming a regular parish priest was from religious life, and for those not familiar with the Catholic structure, I guess you could say, right now I'm general infantry. I'm in the trenches, but many of our religious orders, like the Jesuits, the Franciscans, they tend to be specialists in ministry, and the order I was a part of, the Carmelite order, is a contemplative order. So for me, part of my response to that is to teach people how to deepen their prayer life. So with retreat work, with spiritual direction, sometimes
counseling.
Where
do you see you going with the church? What do you feel God's leading you to do with Sacred Heart?
One of the things that I feel I'm always wanting to emphasize is the spirit of joy.
You have it in your face.
Yes. I want people to feel that. You know, I was once told early in my formation that the surest sign of a calling, of your vocation, is a spirit of joy. And Pope Francis recently said that joy that's untested by the cross is mere enthusiasm.
Wow.
So I don't mean by joy constantly laughing like a madman, but to have that spirit of optimism and hope. And I think part of that sense of confidence comes from the fact that no matter how bad things get in the news, in world affairs, we never forget that God's in control.
Right.
And there's a sense of confidence and peace that comes with that. And you know, it's something that Jesus reminded us, that he wanted us to have joy and to know it to the full, and to know his peace. So I want to convey that to people, that our experience of Christ in our faith should be one that's contagious, and it should overflow joyfully in our life.
Wow, beautifully said.
So,
all right, Reverend Ken Sampson, Father Sampson, from the Sacred Heart Catholic Church here in Medford, and he's new. Been on the scene here since July. He's got a big job overseeing not only an incredible parish with 2,400 families. Man alive! How many staff do you have?
Let's see. It's we got about a dozen full-time staff. We've got 3 pastors. We got a deacon. But I have to get down and count on my fingers.
But I mean, you got a big oversight.
A lot of volunteers. We can't do it without lay volunteers.
Well, welcome.
So,
and thank you for what you do, and thanks for coming in. And our prayers are with you. Keep up the good work. And
thank you.
Let's have you back often, okay?
Well, thank you.
All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us.